Oh, with the PowerPoint. Okay, welcome everyone. This is our second quarterly Street Use 101 and Q&A session. We are doing these quarterly this year as we are still transitioning into Accela. So thanks to everyone's patience as we continue to do that for the rest of this year. And we'll see next year if we have capacity to do these more often than just quarterly. So today we're going to talk about some new portal improvements on the Seattle Services portal. Solid is going to get an overview of SIP versus SIP Lite. We're going to go over some Accela basics, just some things we still see that people are getting confused on or not quite sure how it works. I'll go over the temporary no park permit requirements, really dive into what is the date change amendment versus job start rules. We'll go over the utility permit amendment rules again, just so that we get really comfortable with that. We'll have a use fees overview. Of course, we'll always go over how can you guys get support in between these quarterly sessions, and then we'll have an open Q&A. Okay, so let's talk about how Webex works. It is a little weird. So you are, as an attendee, are muted. Just a second. You're muted and your camera's off. At the end with the open Q&A, I will go ahead and unmute everyone, and so everyone can speak freely as they need. During the presentation, we're going to ask that you ask questions in the Q&A chat box only. So there's two chat boxes because I don't know why. So there's a Q&A chat box and then there's just a chat box. So we're going to ask that you only ask questions during the presentation in the Q&A chat box. And then our panelists will answer those as best that they can along the way. Any questions that aren't answered we'll take care of in the open Q&A session. And I will pause after every subject just to answer more questions as well. If you would like to be unmuted during the presentation, just request that in the Q&A chat box and I will unmute you. Okay. So I'm just going to dive right into it. Portal improvements. If you've gone to the portal yesterday or today you went to the My Records page, you will see that it looks a bit different. It's a new My Records page that Seattle IT has been working on for over a year now. And so thank you to anyone that participated in the user testing on our applicant end. I appreciate it. I'm not going to go into super duper detail about all the changes. They're listed here, and then there's also a really nice video on YouTube that you can view clicking this link. There's also help articles in the Help Center on the Seattle Services portal about this. So this is kind of what it looks like now. If you go to My Pages, this is the new view, and there's a bunch of different filter options above this snapshot here. If you're running into any issues, please email Seattle Services _IT help at seattle.gov, and they will be able to help you. There's also a feedback survey available on the portal that you can use to provide feedback. We want feedback. So if you have any ideas of how to improve the new layout, or if something's not working consistently, please let us know through the feedback survey so we continue improving those. This is the first of many improvements we plan on making on the Seattle Services portal. We're not quite sure what we're working on next, but we'll keep you guys in tune. And if there's something in particular you want addressed, make that known through the feedback survey. Okay. Just a reminder that Accela is an enterprise system, so any changes in the Seattle Services portal itself at this kind of level is done through Seattle IT, and so they're really the ones to help you through that if you have any questions. Okay, we are going to move on over to SIP versus SIP Lite. And so Salaja, do you want to go ahead and...
Yes, thank you, Melody. Hi, everyone. This is Sailaja Tumuluri. I am the Street Implement Permitting Supervisor at Start Street Use. And today I will go over the differences between SIP and the SIP Lite. As many of you know, the Street Implement Permit, or SIP, is one of the major street implement permits in the street use permit, of all the permits that we have at street use. Often the street implement permits take very long time in terms of review and coordination, as they have several city departments and external departments to coordinate with to get them reviewed and approved in the entire process. Over a period of time, we often get requests from applicants that, is there any way that, this process can be faster, or like, we have a very small scale improvement, why does this have to go through this entire, lengthy process overview? So, and that is how, we started looking into a streamlined and a faster street implement permit. And that is how the SIP Lite has evolved. This all started, back in November 2018, when there was a code change to the pedestrian access and circulation, which required curb ramps on the corner lot development properties. So, we were seeing a lot of curb ramps being triggered on these projects, and we did not have a fast track permit to review them. As many of you know that, we are in the cities in a consent degree to draft and, document the curb ramps within the city that are being constructed. So, and hence, we started looking at a fast track process. Not only that, we often get requests from, voluntarily development projects, such as, few neighbors in an alley want to develop their alley, but, they don't want to go through this, huge process. And we wanted to make sure that, a permit exists for all these smaller categories of, permits, which would get a thorough review in terms of, traffic operations review, all the secondary reviewers that are required, and then also have a fast track permit. And that is how the SIP Lite has evolved. And here is this in the screen that you guys are seeing is a typical street implement permitting process flowchart. And this is in the new Accela environment, where an applicant would first submit their application through the Accela portal, and then it would go through the conceptual review, as you know. And once the conceptual review is a 0 to 30% level of the review, and once they get the conceptual review, then the project goes to a design review. Design review is when my team takes over, the street implement permitting team. And then that's where my team will conduct design guidance meetings with the applicant and all the necessary departments to give you guidance on your project. And that at that point, we provide what is called a 60% approval on the plans. Often this is a back and forth process. It takes few cycles. And once we provide that building intake appointment, then it goes to the formal review cycle. That's when a thorough review is being done, holistically from all the departments within the city and the external agencies. And then it goes to what is called a parallel pre-con review, and then issuance prep, issuance and inspection. So this is a typical SIP process, which takes anywhere from, smallest time to 6 months to 2 years or more, depending on the, depth and the breadth of the project. So next slide, please. So then the SIP Lite, as I mentioned, it's a streamlined review process for small scale right-of-way permits, where we have shorter timelines, where we have proposed no design guidance meetings so that, you can skip that design guidance review stage of the permit. And we are anticipating lesser review cycles here rather than that back and forth reviews. And we have also developed reduced plan requirements. If we are purely developing programs, do we need that the robust checklist that we have in the SIP? For example, the 60% checklist, the 90% checklist, and hence, we have went and re-evaluated, what on these small scale projects the survey requirements shall be, and we have developed a single checklist for the SIP Lite projects. And then we are also looking into a reduced permit issuance fee to help small scale projects and also encourage them to develop with the city. And currently this is being under review and it has to go to a council approval. Most likely will be effective at the end of the 2021. Next slide, please. And so here is the process overview for the SIP Lite process. Again, this is in Accela, where an applicant submits application through the portal. It will quickly go through a conceptual review, which is my development review team would look at a 30% plan to make sure that what is truly submitted is a SIP Lite kind of a project. And at that point of time, the development review team will transfer this project to my team, where as you're seeing, we are skipping that design review here. So no longer those design guidance meetings and the waits to schedule those meetings. You will direct it to a formal review screening. At this point, one of the PMs in my team would make sure that the project, whether it is looking good for the building grades, make sure all the sidewalk grades are meeting the the entrances and stuff. And if everything looks good, we let you guys for the building intake, and we don't want to keep that holding up for you guys. So we'll let you guys go for the building intake, and then we'll also route these for the formal review so that it just goes to that 6-week cycle review. If you have a contractor, we will also help you review your pre-construction materials parallelly, and then it can goes to the once everything is approved, it will go to the issuance prep and issuance stage. Next slide, please. So these are some projects that are suitable for SIP Lite. This is also posted on our website. I will share that link here in the chat here. Any land use code required curb ramps that are triggered on those corner lots are eligible for the SIP Lite. Small scale frontage improvements along with the corner curb ramps. Let's say you have a project that triggered not only curb ramps, but also you have to add street trees, do some sidewalk restoration, close out that existing driveway curb cuts. All of that can be now combined under this smaller project, and then can be reviewed. Not only that, small scale alley improvements, as I mentioned, voluntary improvements, street improvements, and we have also added what is called Infield Development. This is where if an existing mid-block development is happening where there is a curb and sidewalk on either side of the street, those projects can also go into this SIP Lite process. We also get curb ramps triggered due to construction activity where there is a contractor has damaged a corner, and now there is a permit required, so they can go to this fast track permit. Next slide, please. So then what does the normal SIP cover then? The rest of the improvements, anything greater than 2,000 square feet of improvements, any storm extension, water main extension, and sewer main extension has to be under a full-blown street improvement permit. Improvements to unimproved streets and alleys has to be under a normal street improvement permit. and then any greater than 2,000 square feet of new plus replaced impervious area, and projects with green factor elements such as GSI, bioretention, and etc. has to be under that full street improvement permit. And obviously the major projects such as CSO projects, and interagency projects such as sound transit, metro, bus rapid transit, etc. And then full plat review, it's what is called as a final plat, has to be under a full street improvement permit. Last slide, please. And here is a quick summary. Again, it just covers the differences between SIP and SIP Lite. Project scope, greater than 2,000 square feet is under the SIP. Anything less than 2,000 is under the SIP Lite process. The review time could be 6 months to 2 years. We are anticipating the SIP Lite will go faster, 4 to 6 months. Again, this time of 4 to 6 months is purely the review time. We are not accounting any time that the customer has, the back and forth process. That is always the customer dependent. We have gotten a lot of SIP permits ever since we have launched the SIP Lite in November of 2020. In the future Q&As, we will, submit you like the data, what we are actually seeing in terms of the review timelines. But they are going very fast. So currently the issuance fee is about 4,800 for the SIP permit. For the SIP Lite, it will be a reduced fee. As I mentioned, it will come end of the year. And the review fees are still hourly for both the permits. The submittal requirements for the SIP, again, as you all know, there are multiple checklists, whereas for the SIP Lite, it is it's just one checklist for everything. DG meetings, are required on the SIP, and the SIP Lite, not required. So that is a quick summary. If you have any questions, I can take them in the chat or respond to that, at the end as needed. I will also put there is on the website, there is a tool that will let you know based on your development, the square foot of development that you have. You can quickly go through this online tool, and it will let you know which permit is required for you, whether it is a SIP, SIP Lite, or a construction use permit. So please feel free to play with that and let us know if you have more questions.
Thank you,
Melody?
Salaja.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't see any questions popping through in the Q&A chat, but feel free to ask them if you have any questions on SIP versus SIP Lite, and Salaja will answer those. Okay, we're moving on to how to request an existing contact. So as everyone knows, we have 4 required contacts on all street use permits: the applicant, the on-site, the financially responsible party, and the owner. We also have optional contacts too. You can change any of these throughout the permit process, even before issuance. But after your permit is issued, the only way to request an existing contact change is by submitting a revision amendment. And although I didn't write this down, if you're in the middle of your permit review, it's a non-issued permit. If you need to make a contact change during that time frame, we just ask that you email s.permits@seattle.gov. So I'm kind of going to go over how to go through the revision amendment and how to request an existing contact change. We have a new form. It's called Change Existing Contact Form. It looks like this, that we want you to complete and upload into the revision amendment when you're requesting a contact change after issuance. I also want to make sure that it's understood that this process is used to change an existing contact already on your permit. If you want to just give somebody access to your permit, you'll need to go through the enable amendment. That is just granting somebody access to your permit. I'm not going through the enable amendment this time around, but if you have any questions around that, let me know. Okay, so the revision amendment, just a reminder, it is similar to the initial application, but most of the information you'll see through the application steps are read-only. The only time you'll be able to enter additional information is in the amendment description, or if you need to extend or add new uses, or if you need to upload documents. Okay, so let's talk about the revision amendment. It is kind of our catch-all amendment. If you need to make a contact change, address change, if you need to change any of the custom fields on the application, like the 24-hour contact or the restoration party or anything like that. If you have a scope of work change, for instance, you have a new use, you're changing what you're doing in your existing space, you need to take an additional lane, or you're just revising your plan altogether, you would use the revision amendment. And then you can also extend the uses in your revision amendment. So if you have more than one of these things, you can do it all under one revision amendment. If you just need to extend your uses, you would just use the extension amendment. So that's the revision amendment. You can do all these things in one amendment. Okay, Chris, you have a question? We've never allowed more than one on-site contact. So the question is the ability to add more than one on-site contact. You can add additional contacts, such as the contractor is a type of contact you can add, but we've only ever allowed one on-site contact. That might have been a script error early on if you were able to do that. If you have, Omar, if you have a scope of work change during the permit process, you need to email the assigned reviewer to make that change. Okay, so let's go through how to apply for a revision amendment. Sorry, some of these slides are still showing the old My Records page, since I just launched yesterday. So just know that when you go to the portal, it doesn't quite look like this anymore, but the functionality is the same. You would find your permit in your My Records page, click on the blue hyperlink, and then click on the Make Changes button to apply for an amendment. Okay, once you're there, you're going to have different options for different amendments based on the permit type. You want to select the revision amendment here. It'll have the permit name with revision at the end. We do have some help text in here to help also. Oh, Tina, look, we got to fix that because that's a different process now. So just click on the revision one and then click Continue Application. All right, so here's the amendment description box. This is where we'll want you to tell us everything you're wanting to change at a high level. Just a brief description of what you want changed during the revision amendment process. Here's a tip. You can't update read-only fields. So even if the main purpose of your vision amendment is to change the FRP contact, the financially responsible party, but you also want to change like the 24-hour contact or something like that, just make sure you note that in here so that we don't miss that for you. Okay, and then when you're requesting a contact change, we do need you to upload the change existing contact form. Just because the amendment description does not give us enough information to know exactly how to do that. And if you don't upload the change existing contact form, we'll have to go out and ask you for it before we can process the contact change. So please do that. Here's another big tip for us. In order for us to perform, efficient plan review, please make sure all your documents are PDF, flattened PDFs. That's a huge time issue if you don't submit a flattened PDF. It slows us way down. And of course, if you're doing other things, you can upload all that, like if you have a revised right-of-way impact plan or traffic control plan, you can upload all those documents in this section of the application. Okay, so that's how you change an existing contact after issuance. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next subject. So I'm gonna answer a couple questions here. If the SDOT inspector closed a permit in error, we cannot reopen a closed permit. So we'll need to have you apply for a new permit, or we can clone it and create it in the back office. So if that happens, please contact your inspector for next steps. Remember, there's a lot of automation in Accela. So if the inspector passed an inspection and there's nothing else stopping the permit from closing, it will automatically close. So maybe there's a miscommunication with the inspector or something. I'm not sure, but please work with your inspector on that and see how we can rectify that. Okay, Marcus, you're asking about temporary no parking revision amendment. Does not allow you to end your permit date early. No, we don't allow that. So that's a little confusing because street use does not administer the temporary no parks, but I think what you're saying is we don't allow you to cut your time off early. And that's always been our policy. When you reserve space in the right of way, you have to think of it like a hotel reservation, right? If you end early, we cannot give that space back to you if the permit has been issued. Okay, Ryan, you're asking what is the best way to make a change prior to a permit being issued? Yes, so one good thing about the portal is you can find and see your assigned reviewer. So if you have an assigned reviewer on your record, please email your reviewer what changes need to happen. If the reviewer has not been assigned yet, you can email s.permits@seattle.gov. By the way, I've been making that clarification in the monthly newsletter. So if you're not already signed up for the newsletter, I would highly recommend that you do that. I'll go over that at the end of this. Marcus, if you're not talking about a street use permit, then that may sound contradictory, but street use has never returned space after an issued permit. I mean, at least that's our policy. I can't say that never happened. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Okay, you guys, I'm moving on to the next subject, which is the permit priority. So the permit priority option in the application has been up for at least 2 months now, maybe even more. This is your opportunity to tell us if your project is an emergency, if it supports a SDOT or other transportation project improvement project, or if your project is in support of an Office of Housing approved affordable housing project. Okay, so the permit priority options are pretty clear except for critical. We may need to change that. Critical means in support of a S.R transportation improvement project. We do have that noted in the help text above to help clarify that. What I will say is people have been selecting these pretty frequently. So please, if you are in one of these buckets, make a note of that in the project and location description box so that we can confirm. I think sometimes this gets selected unintentionally or in error, but it really needs to be one of these things in order for us to expedite your permit. Okay, any questions on that? No. Okay, we're moving on to how to view invoices. I know this has been a point of confusion. One of the things, and I'll go over that in a second. Okay, so for fees that are billed, so we have our hourly charges for review and inspection. Sometimes, depending on the type of work you do and the type, and if you're an agency or a regulated organization, all your use fees will also be billed, right? So you could have all three. For any fees or charges that are billed, invoices are created at the beginning of each month, and an email is sent to the person identified as the financially responsible party. To access invoices, you need to, one, have a Seattle Services portal account, and two, you must be the financially responsible party, or you must be a delegate of that financially responsible party. Okay, so to find the invoice, you would need to go to your My Records page. And again, this is the old look. And you can search for the type of record as invoice. It is a record type. Like a permit is a record type, an invoice is a record type. So you can search for the record type of invoice and you can search for the date and the current month. The date indicates the date the invoice was generated. So a date in June is for fees billed in May. We're always like a month behind. Once you find the invoice record, you just click on the blue hyperlink that like you would do for a permit. And then you would go to the Attachments tab, and then you would find the invoice associated with the month you're looking for. And you just click on that to open it. Okay, all this information can be found in our help article linked on this slide here. How to find and pay your current street use invoice. Okay, so to move on from like if you are the FRP, what can you do? We're now moving on to if you're not the FRP, what can you do? Even though you can't necessarily see the invoice, you can see which permits is tied to an invoice, if you're the FRP or not, by searching on the invoice record itself. So remember, we searched for the invoice, we clicked on the blue hyperlink, we're in the record itself. If you click on the Related Records tab here, and then click View, that will show you all the permits associated with that invoice. And then to pay the fees, you would just click on the Fees button, and then you would, you know, whatever you want to pay, you click what fees you want to put into your cart, and then click the Checkout button, just like you do for every department. Okay, any questions on invoices? Okay, if work is done on emergency, now we are going to apply which priority we need to use, the emergency one. We try to make that one super easy. Emergency permits, we try to get out in 1 to 2 business days. Oh, Omar, good question. You're asking, do we send out reminder emails when payments are due? We just started that back up yesterday. So starting in the next couple weeks, you should start seeing those inactivity emails. We turned them off because just with the launch and the confusion, it was just really overwhelming for everyone. And so we did turn those off for a while, but now they're back on. So if you have an outstanding corrections, payment, anything like that, you will start seeing those reminder emails in the next couple weeks. Okay, I have another question on if my permit is complete, but I'm still getting billed monthly, how do I get that changed? Well, I'm assuming that's, we do have time entry lags. So depending on what the charge is and who it is, that is probably what is happening. But if there are valid charges where they worked on your permit, even though it's issued, there are valid charges. It's nothing we can do about that. And then if you have inspections, remember inspection charges are billed as well. Okay, we're moving on to the next subject, which is how to upload a document in the application. This still seems to be a little bit of confusion around this, so I thought we'd go over it. Just a reminder, the website is really the first spot you should go to figure out what documents are required for your permit type and also what the document requirements are. So we've done a lot of work on our websites to kind of help bridge the information gap that's not currently in the Seattle Services Portal. Because there is no true link between our website and the Seattle Services Portal right now. And so please start by reviewing the website. We're going to continue to improve our websites and making sure the right information is on there, and also that you have a similar experience on each website too. So we're continuing that work this year, albeit it's a little slow, but we're still working on them. We also, on each of our web pages, have a link to the Seattle Services Portal on the right panel. So once you've determined what documents are required and what those documents need to include, once you get to the Upload Documents section, you would go through these steps here. You hit the Select button, choose the desired document type you want from your computer. Then that'll bring you back to this page. You select the document type that you're trying to upload. You can provide a description here if you want. For instance, if you're combining your right-of-way impact plan and traffic control plan, that would be really helpful to know in this description. And then you would click Save. And then if you have more than one document, you would hit Select and do it all over again. You can bulk add. You don't have to do it one by one. Okay, so if you had uploaded a couple of documents, but you still see a red banner up here, that means there's something else required for you to upload before you can submit your application. So read your condition up here to understand what is required. Okay, we are going to do a live demo of this. So I'm going to stop sharing. And Tina, I'm going to make you the host. Okay, Tina, you're now the host.
Ooh, look at that. Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Tina Ho. I've been working with Street Use for a few years. Most notably, recently, I'm also helping out on the Seattle Services Portal email help. So for those of you, when you send an email in and you're like, help, I don't know how to respond to corrections, or help, I need to give somebody access, I'm one of the people that's answering you. One of the things that we have found recently is that people are still struggling with uploading documents as a part of their application, as well as uploading documents as part of a correction cycle. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about that. I'll give you a demo. I might throw in a few extra nuggets. So hopefully you'll find those helpful as well. I'm not going to be monitoring the chat, but I think somebody else will be. Melody, if there's something coming up that I need to share, let me know.
Yep, will do. Thanks.
Okay, so here we go. Share file or new whiteboard? Do you want to become the presenter? Yes. I don't want to share that though.
I think you want to select file
Screen two.
or
There we go.
yeah.
Okay, there we go. That looks better. It looks better than when I practiced yesterday. Okay, so everybody, here we have the portal. I am logged in. There's me. And you can tell I have this little log out button. This is a test environment, so some of the information is there is stuff that I make up. So look at it with a bit of a grain of salt and try to get beyond the details and look at the bigger picture so we can help answer questions and get everybody past this hump. So I'm going to go to My Records. And here, like Melody said, we have a new My Records. You'll see what it looks like in here. It's more of a table format. It's actually pretty cool because you have these little these abilities to filter here. The record numbers still link to get into the record details. And here your actions are a little bit more clear buttons here. The first thing I'm going to do is go
Tina,
into, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to answer a question. Yes, the new My Records page will only work in Chrome or Edge. So if you're using Internet Explorer, you'll have to change your browser to use My Records.
Yes. You'll notice I have two browsers up down here. So first thing I'm going to do, if I look through all of my records here, so the one thing that's cool about My Records now is you may have noticed you save a click. You're not going into just a specific line of business. So here, if I have SDCI permits and street use permits, I'll see them all in a combined list here. Here I have this TMP. What this means is that I have an application that I have started, but I have not yet finished. So you can see here I have an action to resume application. And so I'm going to do that because the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to complete your documents on an application. So here we are in resume application. And here you can see, this is also similar to what a revision amendment or any of your amendments look like. You can just kind of check this out. The difference is I could actually change this information if I wanted to because I have not yet submitted this application. So there's the project address. Here's all my contacts. Again, these are the required contacts, right? Owner, applicant, owner, financially responsible party. And in each case here, I've used this handy dandy little, the financially responsible party is the same as the applicant, if that's the case. Otherwise, I could either add, preferably look up somebody that's existing, right? Instead of creating a new one. That makes it easier for everybody to find their stuff if they are only single contacts rather than duplicate contacts. And here's the area where if you want to add additional contacts, somebody asked for another on-site. Keep in mind here that if you note these contact types as an authorized agent or a contact, those are the two additional contacts that will actually receive email notifications. You can choose other contact types, but those other contact types will not receive email notifications about the permit. They will only be given access to the permit. So this is stuff I did ahead of time already. Project information. Here's my demo, my project name, and here's my very great project and location description that explains everything I want to do, just to make sure that in case I'm not picking the right uses, that the reviewer can tell what's supposed to go into the application. Here I am on my uses page, or I'm sorry, here I am on my related information. So here's a lot of information that a lot of this is for me, right? I have my work order number or my PO and my work order. And then there's some other kind of connective tissues if I'm working with other permits within the city. This information defaults. Here's my permit priority. There you have your emergency if you want to. If you choose emergency, make sure that your project location and description supports that emergency, and you can put extra information in here as well. If you put emergency and it's not an emergency, that's a bummer. The reviewer will correct that. We're going into our uses now. And here's the use information I have on my permit that I've already provided. If I wanted to edit something here, I could. I would select and edit. And I can say, oh, it's not 75 days, it's 78 days. And I can submit that. Or I can add another use if I want to. But now here's the good stuff. I'm going to my documents. So, well, I know Melody said that I could go to the street use website to see what documents are required, but, you know, whatever. I'm not going to. Oh, hold on. You must upload the following documents prior to submitting your application or change request. Right-of-way impact plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, right? Accela is going to stop me. The portal is going to stop me. It says, hey, you cannot go on until you have your impact plan. So I'm going to browse. I'm going to click select. And then I'm going to click select again because I'm going to browse in my computer for pictures. Depending on what browser you are using, this might differ just a little bit, but think of it as finding an attachment for an email. It's kind of the same idea, how you browse for something and find something. So what do I need? I need a row whip. Oh, here's a row whip. And because I want my review to go quickly, my document is already flattened and in PDF form. So there we go. And now I only need one. If I wanted to, I could actually say, oh, you know what? I have a feeling they're going to need something else. I'm going to need some sort of a TCP because I know that I'm in an arterial, or I know that this type of permit, they're going to be asking me for some more documents. So I'm just going to upload that in advance. I'm going to save myself a review cycle. So here we go. And I'm going to say, okay, here is my right-of-way impact plan. It is very important that this document type matches the document type that the program is looking for. If I decide to call this a site plan, then the system won't see that as a match and I won't be able to continue. I need to provide a row whip to continue. Right-of-way impact plan. And then here, I'm going to add a traffic control plan. And if I wanted to, I could add some notes here that would help the reviewer. In Melody's case, where she said, you know, you could actually have them be both, that maybe this is two things. I could say this is my TCP and site plan, or something like that. If there was something additional or schedule or something like, depending on what else you might want to provide, maybe both of those pieces of information are in this document. That's helpful. Before I continue, I need to save this. right? At this point, I can still remove things, add things, change names. Saving is sort of like a submit, like, okay, I'm giving you my documents now. Once I provide my documents, then I can continue. And then we go on and you can see I can submit my application, just like you do your review. If you're doing an order on Amazon or something, you're going to do your review here. You can go back and change things if you want to. If you have another document, you can go and add that, or you can just accept and submit. Okay, so the other thing, I'm going to leave this in pending state in case we need to go back to it later. The other thing I wanted to show you is if I go to my records, oops, let's cancel. Let's go back here. Let's save and resume later. This is also a nice feature. If you don't have all of your documents right away, then here's my temporary number. It's the same number it was before. I go to my records again. I can see this is still a temp number. I have not yet submitted that. Are there any questions there about submitting documents during an application? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to corrections. Okay, so moving on to corrections. Corrections are going to start because I have received an email. And in my email, it gives me instructions on how to respond to corrections. It says corrections are communicated in one of three ways. In one of any of these ways, really, and there's three options. And it's usually a combination of all of that. One is going to be comments that are actually in the email. The second one is a correction sheet, right? That's during when the reviewer has kind of keeps a list of all of the corrections you need, and those are summarized in a document called a corrections document. And the third thing is in conditions of approval. And that's really how we know, or how the system knows, that you are providing the documents we asked for. So again, just like in the application where we had to do the match with the right-of-way impact plan, and right, the system, we saw that error message, the system was looking for the right-of-way impact plan, and then the document type that we chose, those have to match. And it's that match that lets you continue. So here we are. I got my email. It says, hey, you know, you have to do some corrections. And I'm like, oh, I have so many permits in here. How am I ever going to find the one I need? So it happens to be right here. But look at this handy dandy little feature. I can go to status and I can see, show me what is, oh, if I can get to it, here, awaiting corrections. I have one application that is awaiting correction. So I'm going to go into this application to make my correction. Make changes here. I know it's confusing and I apologize. This is really for amendments. This is for changes to, not only changes to issued permits, this is also where you will go to enable access if you want to add another contact. The good thing about enable access, and here's a little nugget of me going off script, enable access is automatically approved. So if you just need to give somebody access, go into make changes and do enable access. As long as that person has a portal account, it will be automatically approved and automatically given access to that permit. Okay, back to my script. Let's open our permit here. Whoa, what is this big red thing yelling at me right here? Let's go take a look. These are my conditions. So if I look at my conditions of approval, these are the things I need. These are documents that I need to provide. And if I look, I can see payment moratorium. This is pending, and this document is required to exit review evaluation. Okay. We'll make a note of that and see what we might have to do. We might have to check our status because I'm not quite sure what status I'm at right now, and we'll take a look at that. The other one we have here is traffic control plan. And we can see the notes here, see marked up document and attachments for details. Well, that's a nice clue. Right-of-way impact plan is received. Okay, fair enough. So we're going to do a little research and we're like, okay, update required on my TCP. So that's probably a condition I need to meet. Not quite sure about review evaluation. But I also know that in my attachment section, there is some things that are interesting. One, there is a comment sheet, a correction sheet, right? So if I click on attachments up here, so right, I was in my conditions down here. So now I'm going to go to my attachments. And if I look in my attachments, I can see here's a corrections document. Well, let's take a look at that and see what the reviewer said. Right, so you click on it and you can open the document. And since this is test, this is right. But here, you're going to look at the different notes from the reviewer. We're not going to pine on that too much, because it's probably not part of this demo. But you'll see what type of documents and what the comments are and what the changes are that need to happen. The other thing we know when we were looking at our corrections, it said in the TCP, it said, look up your marked up document. So here, if I look at TCP, the status of this one is archived. But the status of this traffic control plan is update required. So let's take a look at this one because this is the one that the reviewer uploaded. You can tell by the name. And so we can click on that and open the marked up TCP to see the changes that are required. Any questions about how to look up those changes that are required? Whoa, you don't need to see that. Uh-oh.
So while Tina's getting back to that, so what
Yeah.
she just went over is how to find the corrections document, which is the street use comment sheet, and the traffic control plan with the plan markups on it in the attachments tab of your record. And so now she's going to go over how to upload documents to satisfy all the required conditions to change your record status from awaiting corrections to corrections submitted.
There we go. Sorry about that. So here I am in awaiting corrections. I'm going to go back in here. So now, let's say, oh, the other thing I wanted to look at was my status, because I saw that I had a payment moratorium that was due at review evaluation. So if I click on status, I'm in screening right now, right, where the little scan timer is, and I can see that review evaluation is coming up later. So I don't actually need my payment moratorium right now to continue. I just need my TCP. So here I go to my attachments. And I'm going to go, and I'm just like I did in the application, I'm going to browse in my computer for a corrected TCP. There's my bond document. Let's do demo. Here's my TCP corrected. Open. And I'm only going to upload one document, so I'll say done. And I'm going to go and choose my document type. And I'm going to save. Okay, so I think I'm done now, but I'm going to double check. So I'm going to reload. And what I expect to see when I'm done, hey, it's still in awaiting correction. Clearly I'm not an actor. What went wrong? I expect it to be in correction submitted because I added my TCP. So let me go back and look at my attachment. Oh, Look at that. I added something called a temporary no park. I did not add a TCP. Let me try that again. Accela, the program, is still waiting for a TCP. So let me try again. Here's another, here's a payment one. Oh, let's do this one just for good measure. There we go. Done. And this time, I'm going to make sure I choose the right document type. It is. See what happened? They're awfully close. I should have been careful. I'm going to call it a traffic control plan. And in my description, I'm going to say, please disregard document labeled TNP. We chose the wrong type. Then I'm going to save that. And now I'll do a double check, make sure. There's my traffic control plan. You'll notice when you upload your document, we change the document name. Okay, that just helps us match things a little bit better. So don't go, if you're looking for your other document name and don't see it, not to worry. So you'll notice I'm still in awaiting corrections. I just need to do a little refresh. And you'll notice that the status is now corrections submitted. That is a very good status to have when you're submitting corrections. And that way, now Accela knows and the reviewer knows it's time to look at your stuff. And then one other last plug before I turn it back to Melody. In case you don't know or can't remember how to do your corrections, if you open the help articles here, which I use these too, especially when I'm helping emails that come in, and go to street use. Here we talk about all sorts of great things, including how to respond to street use corrections. And if you go through here, you'll see all of the steps on how to respond and the different statuses. And there's also screenshots, which we're also updating too, right? It's still the old UI that takes you through all of the different screenshots and has lots of helpful tips in there. Also in here is how to view your invoice. How do you know what type of amendments to choose? A little information about inspections. Here's all your fees, right? How to pay your invoices and everything like that. Highly recommend this location. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. A couple of things. There's questions on when would it be appropriate to upload the corrections response? And just a reminder that the corrections document is the street use comment sheet that Tina brought up earlier. If the reviewer wanted your responses, they would have added a condition called corrections response. And that's when you would upload the street use comment sheet with your responses on it. And to Jason's point, please convert that to a flattened PDF before you upload. And the other question we had is, can we undo or replace a file that was just uploaded?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
During application, you can remove a file if you have not yet submitted it. I believe there's a delete in there or a remove. Let's go double check. I don't want to test in front of you guys. I'm pretty sure you can. And if not, then, you know, it's a digital world. It's okay if there's extra stuff out there. It might make it
Can
clear
you
to
do
the
it
reviewer.
during the corrections? Responding to corrections?
I think, again, before you save. So if you're in attachments and you are browsing for something, a flattened PDF here, and you say done, you can remove it here. But once you've saved it, onto here, there's no way to remove it. Any other demo questions out there?
There's a good question around, kind of, I think the question is more around what is the point of corrections, right? So we really shouldn't be setting a permit to awaiting corrections unless there's something you can actually respond to. Sometimes we can just satisfy things via email. The problem with that is there's no tracking mechanism for street use around that. So it's sitting in our queue, and we have no way to really track that back and forth email application. So at times we will try to facilitate that when we can, but sometimes even if it's just a clarification point, we really do need some more information from you, and we have to do that through the corrections cycle. But we are having lots of internal conversations around that and how to improve that process. Hi, Ignatius. Nice to see you too. Okay, any other questions on responding to corrections? Or anything else you might want Tina to go over?
Did that answer questions people might have? Was that the right level of demo for people? Or is there something, right, because we are doing this quarterly and we want to help you. So is there something, a different way you would want to see it, or a different level of information, or perhaps a different topic for the future?
Yeah, we are also looking at starting to do, instead of just the help articles, starting to do help videos. And one of the first ones we're going to do is how to respond to corrections. So if there's something else you want us to go over in that help video, just email me and we'll get that added. Okay, here's a kind of unrelated question, but a good one. How do you remove a permit you have withdrawn, such as a right-of-way date change request? How do you remove it from your permit list?
Interesting. Good question. So what I would say with that, it doesn't, right now we don't have a way to remove it, but what you can do is based on status. Let me see if I have a withdrawn one in here. Yes, I do. So what you can do is you can select multiple filters of what you do want to see. I want to see things that are about to expire. And so you can see the filter is right here. Then you can say, oh, I want to see things that are in process. And then those show up. So you can filter by the things that you do want to see. It's not quite like Zappos and filtering by things you don't want to see, but you can filter by things that you do want to see. And then you can also sort. Right? It has a little bit more of an Excel feature in it where you can hop on these things. So what you could probably do too, clear. Right here, I have all my withdrawals on top. I filtered by status. I can put all my withdrawals to the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, so for this new My Records page, there was an attempt to have some functionality of removing voided or withdrawn applications, but we ran into a lot of issues because remember, it's an enterprise system, so it wasn't working for every department. So I think we're going to continue to look for that option. And if you that would include any sort of permit type you withdrawn, you could potentially in the future remove those from your list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions?
You can also download this. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You can also download this if you are an Excel geek like I am, and use that to sort. and see, kind of narrow your focus view of what you want to see, and then you can search for those individual permit numbers up here, or see if there's a different pattern how you might want to search for your stuff.
Any other questions for Tina? Well, thank you, Tina.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I think you can just grab it back.
Yep.
Okay.
How many clicks does it take to change hosts? Okay, so we just went over how to respond to corrections. Oh, here's another good question, Tina. Do TMP, temporary records, ever, do they stay on the portal forever right now, right?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, they do. Right now,
Um,
everything stays on the portal forever.
Yeah, that is something we've looked at too, of getting rid of those at some point in time. I think that's something we'll continue to have conversations on. Okay, so we do also have slides in this deck, and just FYI, I forgot to say this at the beginning, but the recording of this webinar and this PowerPoint presentation will be on our website next week, on our dedicated street use permit timelines and updates website. So I'm not going to go over this in detail since Tina just did a live demo, but there is just a walkthrough on these slides on how to respond to corrections. We also give tips on this in our monthly newsletters as well. And then if you have any, if your record is not shifting from awaiting corrections to corrections submitted, it does not land in our queue. So if your record is still in awaiting corrections, we don't know you did anything. For some time, we are manually doing a query on when somebody uploads to something in awaiting corrections and it doesn't move to corrections submitted. And you would receive an email potentially from our support staff who's helping out with that. So we're going to do that manually for now, just to kind of figure out, hey, what are some of the confusion points? What are some things that we may be doing that's not working out so well? And what are the common themes from our applicants as well, just so we can keep improving this process. In the interim, if you are not sure why your record is not moving from awaiting corrections to corrections submitted, and you've checked out our help articles and you still can't get it to move, please email us. Don't spend too much time. We want to help you. So just email us at our SS portal email here. Okay, we're moving on to temporary no park requirements. It has been a goal of SDOT's to figure out a way to link paid parking impacts to the street use permit process. And so we did that with our launch of Accela in November. So if work is removing paid parking from the public, SDOT recovers the lost revenue through temporary no park permits, including long-term billing agreements. Street use permits now have a new requirement to require proof of application of the TMP application before we issue our permit. So you don't need an approved or issued temporary no park permit. You just need proof of application. that can look at the form of any of these: a copy of the application received email, a screen image of the application record details page, a copy of the permit if you already have it, a copy of the signed billing agreement, a copy of an email from traffic staff indicating no reservation needed. We also, the reviewer, will also look internally and search to see if you have already applied for it as well. We know this has been a bit of nuanced. We have been working with our transportation operations and transit and mobility divisions. We extended the restriction to apply for the short-term TMP permits from 30 days to 90 days to help with some of the issues going on with that. And we're continuing to work with our utility agencies on how to improve this process for their work as well. Okay, any questions on temporary no parks? Unfortunately, like all records in the State Services portal, once you submit your application, you can't change any of the application fields, and the TMPs don't even have an amendment available to them. So if you need to make a change to your dates, that's absolutely possible. You just need to email, I should have put that in here, the traffic permits email address. If you go to the website in this slide, the temporary no park permit website, it'll give you the email address to email them. So kind of like if your permit's an application and it doesn't have an assigned reviewer for street use, you would email s.permits. It's that version for our traffic counter. It's s.traffic permits at seattle.gov, I think, but don't quote me on that. TMPs are required for all street use permits that are impacting paid parking. It's just for SIPs and UMPs, it's due at the end of the process. Well, it's due at the end of the process for all permits, but it takes a lot longer to get to the end of the process for SIPs and UMPs. So yes, they are due. This is a requirement for all street use permits if you're impacting paid parking, right? So mostly on the major arterials in the city. Okay, the street use counter is not opening anytime soon. We think it's going to be closed for the rest of 2021. We are working with SDCI and potentially opening a consolidated counter sometime in 2022. We'll have more information on that at the end of the year. The SMT is still closed to the public and will be through at least September. Crazy times, you guys, crazy times. Okay, I'm moving on. We're going to talk about date change amendment and then job starts. So date change amendment is new to our lives since the November launch. I think there's been a little confusion on what is it, and so I just want to talk about it really quick. The date change amendment is only used to move your start date before your issued start date, right? So only in the screen area would you need a date change amendment. So let's talk about job starts for a second. Just a reminder that job starts are scheduled through the portal now. No longer, you don't need a call, you don't need an email, you need to go to the Seattle Services portal. The job start notification schedules the initial inspection. And of course, we have a help article linked here on this slide on how to schedule or reschedule your job start notification. For non-utility permits, the job start can be scheduled 30 business days from the day you are scheduling. So we're only allowing you to go 30 days out. And then if that changes, you can go back and reschedule and have 30 more days to reschedule your job start. For utility permits, as of yesterday, we have extended that window to include the entire time through the permit expiration date. Just a reminder that utility permits have that 6-month permit expiration window from the end of the use date, the issued use date. Okay, so that's brand new. We're hoping this will help you manage your job starts a little easier for utility permits. Breaking news. Okay, so let's talk about job starts just a little bit. Oh, someone's asking to go over the non-utility job start rules. So from the day that you're scheduling your job start, you only have 30 days to schedule that job start. And remember, it has to be within your permitted use period too, right? So you can reschedule these as needed, but only in your available use period. Okay, so we'll go over another rule. If you do not get to scheduling your job start before 5 days after the issued use start date, the initial inspection will automatically get scheduled, right? So you only have a small window here. So you have all this time and this 5 business days to schedule your job start. Once the initial inspection is completed, so it can get scheduled, and if the inspector doesn't get to it for a while, you still have that time to schedule your job start. But once the initial inspection is completed, you are. Can anybody else hear me?
I hear you.
Yep, I hear you.
All right, thank you. Sorry, Melissa, I'm not sure why you're not. Okay, I don't know if that's better. Everyone seems to be able to hear Melissa, so maybe check on your audio settings. Okay, sorry. Once the initial inspection has been scheduled 5 business days after the issue start date and completed, the job start notification is no longer available on the portal. So if you need to reschedule your initial inspection or add another inspection, please just email your assigned inspector directly. Okay, any questions on job starts? Okay. Someone wants to go back
Hey,
to
Melody,
slide
can I try and
39.
say that?
Go
Can
ahead.
I try and say that just a different way?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the same thing Melody said, but just in a different way with a little different perspective. When your permit is issued, we automatically schedule that initial inspection. Your initial inspection is going to be scheduled automatically for 5 days after your first use start date. If you do not updating your job start, automatically changes that initial inspection date. So if you're not going to start on the day that you told us when you submitted your application, which is totally normal and natural, know that if you don't tell us that your start date is changing before we have that scheduled initial, somebody's going to come out to your site and see, hey, there's nobody here. And even if you don't submit your job start, somebody is still scheduled to come and check on you. So scheduling your job start move that initial inspection date to the date that you really need it. So you can save yourself an inspection or so. That's all.
And also a reminder that you have to give us 2 business days notice to reschedule or schedule your job start.
Yep.
Okay, somebody wanted to go back to this slide again. So this is a new thing as of yesterday where utility permits, if you get to your job start before the initial inspection is completed, you have that entire time between the date you're scheduling to the permit expiration date to give us a new initial inspection date.
Right.
Okay.
So if you know you're not going to get to your job until September, you can just change that job start and you can pick a date in September. Hopefully, so what happens when you pick that date in September is we change that schedule date for your initial to be that date in September that you picked. An inspector is going to come out there whatever that date is in September. If you realize in August, oh, we need to move that out to November, you can go and you can update your job start, and that will change the date for your initial to November, right? So up until 2 days before that schedule date for your initial, you can manage those job starts and those initial inspections through the job start.
Okay, I'm moving us along, so got quite a bit to cover. So just a reminder that, with the 6-month permit expiration timeline on the utility permits, the amendment rules look a little bit different depending on what you're doing. Date change amendment is the same for all permit types. Is when you need to move the issued start date forward or before your issued start date. You need to work before your issued start date. You would only need an extension amendment if you're extending beyond the issue duration or beyond the permit expiration date. And then the revision amendment is the same for all permit types too. We went over that earlier in the presentation. Okay, so this is what it looks like for a utility permit needing a date change amendment. Same as all other permits, you need to start before your issued start date. That's when you would need a date change amendment. For extensions, if you had your issued start date here and your issue duration here, you can work within this duration anytime along this blue line that represents the permit expiration date, right? So you'll need to manage your job starts in the portal to tell the inspector where you're working, when you're working, but you can work anywhere in this blue line that represents the permit expiration date without an extension. The only time you would need an extension during the initial permit expiration date is if your duration is longer than your issued duration. So say this is 10 days, but you need another 10 days, you'll need to apply for an extension amendment. And just a reminder, if you're in the hub, you'll need to coordinate those new dates with the hub coordinator. Okay, the other time you would need an extension is when you're going past the permit expiration date. So 6 months blew by and woo, you guys were really busy, you didn't get to it, but all of a sudden you need to start on month 7. It's outside the permit expiration timeline, the blue line here. That's when you'll need an extension amendment. And again, if you're in a hub, you have to coordinate with your hub coordinator. If you have, there's a question on when to set your start date based on the job start rules. I know that's really challenging for some organizations because, it really varies when you'll do the work. But if you are struggling getting to your job start scheduling and rescheduling, I would advise you look at pushing your start date out a little further. Just a reminder that we didn't say this above, but if the initial inspection gets completed because the job start was not scheduled or rescheduled, you will be charged for that initial inspection. Okay, I'm moving us along. So we're going to go through a use fees overview. So Sean, do you want to go ahead and take it over?
Sure, but you're doing such a good job. I think you could do it if you wanted.
Go for it.
How do I move it to the next? Should I just tell you?
Yep, just tell me. I'll move it for
Okay.
you.
It's pretty short, but basically, this is just a use fee overview of what our use fees are, how they're calculated, and just some ways to basically minimize the use fee costs. So this should be something that all of the people who get permits all the time know already, but if you don't, this is kind of just to refresh our fee structure. So the next page. So what are use fees? Use fees are what we charge as a cost per day to occupy the right of way for construction use, basically, or utility use. Let's see. Yeah, so basically it's just what we charge to try and deter people from using more of the right of way or using the right of way for a longer period of time. And yeah, I think that's the main goal. Our use fee equation is based on a cost per day. Before Accela, I think, or actually maybe it was early 2019, it used to be per 10 days of use, but that switched to a cost per day equation, and it's basically the sum of fee factors, which we'll go over, and that's basically dependent on the location and types of mobility impacts your closure has, times the square footage of occupied space, divided by 100, and times an escalation rate, or an RSD, which is just an escalating rate for basically how long you've been occupying the right of way for your project. So next. So the main way the fees are determined is these fee factors. So there's a location-based factor or density factor, which is where in the city you are. This is your base multiplier. So urban center is $1.10, urban village 70 cents, or neither 20 cents. So there's always going to be some amount of fees for the fee factor. Arterial streets get charged a 40-cent base. Non-arterials and alleys are 0. And then the modal priority or mobility impact, that is to deter people from blocking transit lanes, which is bus only lanes. Not if it's a combined bus and travel lane, then that doesn't count. A bike lane, and again, this is a specific bike lane or protected bike lane. If it's like a share-o lane, that does not count as a bike lane. And then the pedestrian blocked or impacted, that is for sidewalks. Yeah, next. And then the square footage is pretty self-explanatory. Every single permit that we issue requires a right-of-way impact plan. And the main reason why is so we can get the square footage to calculate these fees. So this is why a lot of our reviewers will say, hey, please submit a right-of-way impact plan with the square footage on it. Because we can estimate the square footage for your project, but that could drastically impact the fees that will be charged per day for your work. So this square footage plan, the right-of-way impact plan, is something that we need to be clear about the size of your impact. This is directly related to the fees. And the last thing is this escalation rate or rate start, RSD. Basically, this is just a multiplier for how long you've been in the right of way. There's two different like escalation rates. There's arterial streets, which escalate every 30 days, 1, 2, 4, 8, and 12. And 12 is the maximum. So once you hit that 121 days or longer, you're at the max of the escalation. For non-arterials, it goes slower. It's 30 days and then 60 days, then 60 days, and then yeah, it goes based on basically by 60 days instead of 30. And I think this RSD is what causes a lot of confusion about why sometimes, you know, when you get your permit for 90 days, it's relatively inexpensive, and then the next 90 days, you know, you're looking at a multiplier of from ×4 to ×8 and ×12, so the fees like drastically increase. So I think this is something that gets overlooked, but the duration of the project definitely has one of the biggest impacts in how much the fees are going to be costing for use fees.
And just a reminder that we do have this street use estimator on our website that you can use to kind of plan what the use fees will be.
Yeah, I have it in here in the 2 slides, I think. But yeah, so this is just an example of how we would calculate use fees and where the fees come from. And like Melody said, this street use estimator screenshot on like the right side of the slide, that is something that's on our website. You can go in, and there's different use lines, because you know, for each different use or mobility impact of your use, it could change the you know, the fee factors for that space. So there is multiple lines, and you can plug in your information, estimate your fees on the estimator. But this is just an example of what it would look like for a job, you know, at the SMT. It's downtown urban center, arterial street, closing a sidewalk for 500 square feet for 70 days. The RSD for this one, since it's a brand new project, start on day 1. If you were going to extend this for another 30 days after the 70 days, then the RSD would be 71, because you're starting on day 71 of the project. And this slide also has that link to the fee estimator. I don't know if I should link it in the chat as well, but the fee estimator is embedded into our main fee website.
How to estimate fees, how to pay and estimate fees website.
Yeah, but the in the PowerPoint, that clickable link will take you right there. So the next slide, I think, is just, oh, okay, so the next slide is this is, I think, what it looks like on the front end when you're applying for your permit. And basically the important things that need to be entered by you, the applicant, is the square footage, the mobility impacts, because those can impact the fee factors, and the duration. There's another thing that I'll mention, I think, on the next slide about work days. But yeah, those three highlighted sections are what are going to impact your fees the most. The rate start will always starts at 1. So Accela will automatically set it as 1 for your first use. And then if you extend a space, say you did 90 days and you're extending it for another 90, Accela will automatically set the RSD to 91 for whatever space you're extending. So typically that happens automatically. You don't need to worry about adjusting it. And then same with the street type, which is the arterial, non-arterial, and the location. That is calculated automatically by Accela based on your address and based on the street that you're working on. You don't need to worry about entering in those. And then just some things that have changed from moving to Accela, or to Accela from Hanson, is that we now allow you to say, hey, we're only going to be working on weekends or weekdays. And if you do that, your fees will be adjusted to only charge you for either 5 or 2 days. The default is every day. So for 7 days, you would get charged for all 7 days of use. You know, if you have like a site fence up and you're permanently taking the right of way, then every day is what you have to do. If it's a temporary setup where you're, you know, in and out and can open it up on the weekends, or it's open on the weekdays, then that work day schedule is something that is an easy way to kind of lower the use fees. Also, for sidewalks specifically, if you can reroute them into the parking lane on the same side of the street, I don't think there's an extra charge for a pedestrian walkway on the same side of the street. If you have to close it and detour them to the other side of the street, then that would obviously be the full fee factor for closing a sidewalk. But if you can reroute them on the same side, that can save you some use fees. Yeah, so takeaways, the fees are based on, 5 main factors: where it is, the street type, what mobility impacts are, how long you're working, and then what the square footage of the use is. And takeaways, fees escalate. So the longer your project is, the more days you have to take the right of way, that drastically higher your fees will be. I didn't really mention the spaces, but we have to set up your permit to have different spaces for each segment of the street and for each mobility impact that is different. If it has a different fee factor, then it has to be a different space. So sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. But anyway, if you can keep your fee factors down, you can reduce your use fees. And the fees are very predictable. You can go into the estimator, like we said, and kind of plan out or budget out how much the project's going to be. I think the duration is really a big deal, as well as the amount of space you're using. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Sean. I want to mention one more thing up here. Is like when you do select weekdays only, that means you are opening up everything to the traveling public on the weekends. If you are not able to do that, then you have to select every day. Okay, we are at our open Q&A point of the webinar. Share my whiteboard. So I'll go ahead and unmute everyone. Okay, everyone, if anyone has a question and wants to speak, go ahead. And if you want to mute, go ahead and mute yourself.
What's in the self-service? It's not. That's why I don't know what the structure looks like. I mean, I saw a picture of it, but it looks like
I'm gonna have to mute everyone again.
so
Okay, that didn't work. If you want to be unmuted, just let me know. Okay, here's a question. We do a lot of right-of-way restoration. What is the best way to convey the scope of work an inspector is required when submitting for a permit? Jamie, don't quite understand your question. Maybe I'll unmute you and then you can tell me a little bit more. Your right-of-way impact plan would be the best way. And then when you're scheduling your restoration inspection, you can add notes into that inspection. You can also request an on-site meeting as well. That's a site inspection, or you can just request that in the description of the restoration inspection. I don't know, Lukey, if you have any more thoughts on that. Oh, you're talking about the markout, Jamie. There's a markout inspection that you can schedule in the portal. That's how you would request that. Can people hear me?
I can hear you, Melody.
Okay, thanks. Okay, yes, Patrick, this presentation and the recording of this presentation will be on our website sometime next week on our street use updates and timelines website. I think Jamie just emailed the inspector. Email him or call him. Bilkis, I'll go ahead and unmute you. Okay, Bilkis, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I have actually two questions about the corrections submission. I saw sometimes we receive marked up documents on the traffic control plan and also the Excel commands sheet. Do you want us to do both, like fix the traffic control plan and also the Excel command sheets? And you said we need to convert it from Excel command sheets to PDF.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, because we don't know that part. And we also need to select the corrections response when you're uploading the comments sheets, Excel comments
Yes.
sheets. Okay. And the question is, if we're uploading the right-of-way plan or site plan, the description part should be the same, or description part we can put the date and then when you upload it. I thought before that we need to be matched with the document type and the description, but this is not right.
The description can be whatever you feel is needed, just additional information about that document. It doesn't have to match anything.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay. And the second question is temporary no permit requirement. I saw sometimes the conditions of approval saying that things, but our utility permit is still in pending. Do we supposed to apply temporary no parking at the same time when you approving our utility permits?
Yes. Well, maybe not at the same time. It depends on, we just can't issue the street use permit until you've applied for the TNP, the temporary no park.
Okay.
So whatever makes sense to you, if you want to wait a couple weeks after you submitted, or if you want to do it at the same time.
The reason right now we are putting 1 year out for the job start because we don't know when our crew gonna schedule the work and when you guys are approving our permit. So in that situation, we don't know how to fill out the temporary permit. Sorry, no parking, temporary permit, because we don't know the date and time and schedule.
Yeah, we are having internal conversations about that issue with utilities. For now, just apply for it, push the date on the temporary no park out as far as you can, which is 90 days. And then once you have your issued permit, email the traffic email, I think it's s.trafficpermits@seattle.gov, and say, we need to push this out a little bit later. I do hope to have a solution for that in the next couple of months, but just for the interim, that's how we have to manage it.
Okay. Okay, because yeah, that is still in the question for our side.
Yeah.
Okay, and what do you say? I think I missed that about the everyday or weekdays or weekends. Which way we have to lower our use fees? Which selection, if we can advise our engineers?
It's not a big impact for the duration that you guys have. If you know for sure they're only working weekdays, then select weekdays only. If you don't know for sure, like sometimes they work weekends, you have to select every day.
Oh, okay, okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bilkis.
You're welcome.
Okay, Eric, I'll get you next. I can find you. Shane, to answer your question on what type of permit do you need if you're using a small scissor lift on the sidewalk at the corner of the building, if you're able to maintain pedestrian mobility, you can apply for the right-of-way maintenance permit. If you have to close pedestrian mobility, you have to apply for the right-of-way construction permit. Okay, Eric, you're unmuted.
Hey, Melody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, so my question, I think you've actually been on in the email chain at some point, but I'm not sure how unique this issue is, but our job sites started last April, right when COVID shut everything down. And so we worked for probably a week with our street use permit that was applied for like a 4-month permit. And after we started, we staged some construction fencing like 1 or 2 feet into the right of way just for safety of the pedestrians because there was a hole in the ground. So now that we're starting back up, it looks like our escalation fees are at that 12 times that Sean was talking about earlier. And I was wondering, first of all, how unique is this issue in the city right now, where COVID completely destroyed our street use escalation? And secondly, is there any like leeway on whether or not we can restart our escalation?
We did get temporary authority to reduce fees during the shutdown period if you were able to completely clear the right of way. So I don't know what it is, what your project is or what you were able to do, but Judy Connors is the contact for that. So if you were able to clear the right of way, then we are able to adjust your fees for that shutdown period until you came back and started working again.
Yeah, the question is more like instead of, and that period that we were using was adjusted, but the period that we're in now is currently in that higher escalation fee, and I guess the crux of my issue here is that we staged this construction fence like a foot into the sidewalk, and it didn't like encumber any pedestrians or anything. It was for safety so that they wouldn't fall in the hole. So I guess I can just email someone else after
Yeah.
this.
I would say just email Judy.Connors, Connors, and she'll be able to work with you on that particular
Right.
situation.
Thanks for your help, Melody, and thanks for the webinar.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. Okay, Lua, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong. If you obtain hub approval, what is the turnaround time on permit issuance? Well, hub approval during permit issuance is part of the permit review. So I don't really understand that question. They're part of the whole permit timeline. Okay. If it was, it should not be pre-approved outside the permit process. That's why I'm a little confused. If that happens, the hub coordinator can just give us that information when we route it to them during the permit review. What is the proper duration for a project that you are planning on closing a street for 1 day and then closing it again for a day, a week, or 2 later? That is a good question and kind of a hard question to answer. So, we no longer work in 10-day increments. We work on an everyday basis. However, we only have the ability to say every day, only weekdays, or only weekends. So that's kind of our limitation on the matter. If you have 1 or 2 events, it is fine to have, 2 use lines for those 1 or 2 events. That's fine. But it's really hard for us to manage a permit with a bunch of lines and a bunch of days. Yes, we'll include this PowerPoint presentation and the recording in the newsletter. Okay, here's another question. Should a project that has multiple areas of street and sidewalk restoration be permitted as one scope of work, or can they be individually permitted? They should be all under one permit. The hub coordinator, Thea, is responsible for scheduling the work in the hub. So if they schedule it for a certain timeline, that should be reflected on the issued permit. Okay, guys, we're at time. I'm happy to answer a couple more questions if needed. If not, we'll get this posted on our website and send it out in the newsletter. And then we'll get our next quarterly one set up probably for September-ish. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Have a great weekend.